So my very first Sunday in this congregation was 2 falls ago, and it was water communion. It also happened to be the day that you were dedicating and celebrating the completion of your parking lot project. A goal some how many years? 35 years in the making. Nobody's counting. It was a jam-packed day. The service was overflowing with the celebration of homecoming that is the water communion. And that feeling of celebration spilled over and well beyond the hour of worship into the celebration and dedication of the parking lot, where we took the water that we had gathered during water communion and we poured it into the trees that now guard that initial gathering spot. It certainly meant that this brand new intern had to jump in, feet or maybe even head first. But it also was a wonderful setup for the tenacity and joy that I would witness over the coming years here. Remember the 35 years on the parking lot project part. So it does seem somewhat fitting to me that my time at this congregation as your ministerial intern comes to close with another ritual of celebration, the annual flower communion. If the water communion is our coming together, the time when we mingle our waters, our wisdom, our experience, our questions, our dreams, then the flower communion is the time each year that we take to celebrate the fruits of that mingling, or the blooms, as the case may be. That mingling of care and intentionality and community nurtured by the waters of our coming together. That coming together, that weaving of water is the birth, the start, the seed of something wonderful, something beautiful. It's the birth of community. Earlier, we heard from the Reverend Amanda Poppy via Jude, the welcoming of a new being, a new soul into the world, and wondering with hopeful curiosity, who is it going to be? What a loaded question. But Reverend Amanda thoughtfully replied to her elder child, we're going to have to wait and see. We get to ask that question, who is it going to be? Anytime we are growing something new, anytime we are waiting for the birth of a new beginning, as well as a new being. And it is a question that we get to ask over and over again of the communities that we are a part of, particularly religious communities like this one. Who is it going to be? How will the different lives that come together under this roof, under this call, join each other, change each other, and unfold into something bigger than themselves? How will this garden of community grow? Who is this community going to be? Some more loaded questions. I find the start of the answer in the words of the prophet, poet, professor, and member of the Potawatomi Nation, Robin Wall Kimmerer. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer retells the traditional story of the three sisters. The three sisters are 3 plants that are traditionally grown together: corn, beans, and squash. And depending on the tradition you're a part of, that story goes a little differently, but it all ends with them in the garden together. And she says that together these plants, corn, beans, and squash, feed the people, feed the land, and feed our imaginations, telling us how we might live. The more botany-focused version of the story that she tells goes something like this. At the height of the summer, when the days are long and bright and the thunderers come to soak the ground, the lessons of reciprocity are written clearly in the Three Sisters garden. Together, their stems inscribe what look to me like a blueprint of the world, a map of balance and harmony. The corn stands 8 feet tall. Rippling green ribbons of leaf curl away from the stem and every direction to catch the sun. But no leaf sets directly about another, so that each can gather light without shading the others. The beans twine up and around the cornstalk, weaving itself between the leaves of the corn, but never interfering with their work. In the spaces where the corn leaves are not, buds appear on the vining, and they begin to expand outward, stretching leaves and clusters of fragrant bean flowers. The bean leaves groups and is held close by the stalk of the corn. Then, as you look down at the ground, the squash spreads out along the feet of the corn and the beans and creates a carpet of big, broad squash leaves that intercept what light falls between the leaves of the corn. They layer spacing using the gifts of the sun efficiently and with little to no waste. This organic symmetry of forms belongs together. The placement of every leaf, the harmony of shapes speaks their message. Respect one another. Support one another. Bring your gift to the world and receive the gift of others, and there will be enough for all. In Kimmerer's tradition, these plants are understood to be sisters, each with different gifts to bring in their relationship to each other, each with different gifts to give to the soil that feeds them. This was a traditional understanding long before science came to support this traditional knowledge of the Three Sisters planting method. Kimmerer acknowledges that the wisdom of the Three Sisters was diminished by my ancestors who came to this land. She says, for millennia, from Mexico to Montana, women had mounded up the earth and laid these 3 seeds in the ground, all in the same square foot of soil. When the colonists came to Massachusetts shore, they first saw the indigenous gardens. They inferred that the savages didn't know how to plant. To their minds, a garden was meant to be straight, single rows of a single species, not a 3-dimensional sprawling mass of abundance. And yet, they ate their fill and asked for more. Well, now science has caught up to that indigenous knowledge of the Three Sisters. We now understand what nutrients those various plants give to each other and the soil and why they work so well together. It has come to understand the reciprocal nature that they give to one another. But I wonder, have our communities, our understanding of what it means to be together as humans, restored this traditional teaching based on what it means to be together as plants? Have we learned what the garden has to teach us about being human? Because I think it has a lot to teach us. Leading up to this service, I had a nursery rhyme stuck in my head. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? There seems to be debate about what the next 2 lines are, but those 2 stay the same. Despite the question in this classic nursery rhyme, it's really not a mystery anymore how a garden grows. It's not a mystery what forces align to nurture, sustain, and transform the garden of community either. It's not a mystery because these gardens of community, they are grown by choice. Gardens of community are grown by choice. Communities are grown by the sunny glow of the Spirit's fire in our hearts. Only when we make space for the Spirit, space for the Spirit's light to shine through us and help light the way for others and sustain our own souls. Communities are grown through the watering of wisdom, but only when we are willing to listen to the wisdom that flows from ourselves. Even our tears have lessons to teach us. And also the wisdom that is brought from others, from those unfamiliar sources, because those waters carry minerals and vitamins that this garden needs. Our communities are grown through cultivation, by loving the dirt as much as the bloom. But only if we are willing to bring the presence of the Spirit, love, and transformation to the budget forum as much as we are willing to bring it to our celebrations. By knowing that a garden is more than its harvest. Communities are grown by weeding, the tender care that comes by our intentionality. But only if we are willing to examine the choices we make, to look at the habits we perpetuate, and foster a discerning sense of what is needed and what is not. Communities are grown through planting seeds. Only if we are willing to plant in faith alone sometimes, though, with no guarantees that the products of our planting will be harvested by ourselves. The seeds sown in the lives of children, the seeds sown to help bind the wounded heart. Communities are grown by practicing abundance, but only if we can recognize that the gifts of the garden taste best when shared, that they're more prettier together. Communities are grown through the gentle gift of time. Only when we are willing to breathe deep and trust that the sun will come out tomorrow, and with it the hope of a new day. Communities are grown through purposeful harvest. Only when we are prepared to see when times of change have come, to reap the benefits they bring, to celebrate the blooms, the bounty, and also recognize the close of a season. UUFH, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. How does your garden grow? Through sun and water, through cultivation and weeding, through seeds planted and abundance practiced, through the gift of time and the recognition of a purposeful harvest. How does your garden grow? When it comes to my internship, my learning and my growth here, you have practiced abundance. And for that, you have my immense gratitude. You've watered my curiosity, supported my growth, and grown right alongside me. And that nurture, that sharing of time and space will continue to blossom as my ministerial journey continues beyond this particular garden. As I start the next phase of my own growth, I am confident that this is not an end, but a divergence. Seeds carried elsewhere, blooms brought by one and taken home by another. And it warms my heart to know that this community, this garden, continues to grow, continues to share the warmth and caring that it has so wonderfully shared with me. So continue to grow this garden. Continue to choose to grow this garden. Choose to nurture your best self. Allow yourselves to grow and transform. A seed is meant to grow. It isn't meant to stay in its shell. Choose to nurture possibility, to plant unknown seeds that might bear unknown fruit, and then soak up the blessings that will come again and again. Choose to nurture each other, to know that no plant grows alone, but in the company of others, sharing soil, space, and spirit. Choose to practice the abundance of a garden, to plant more than you can harvest, to ensure that there is enough for all and enough for the unexpected. To believe that the sun and the air and the rain are not a finite resource, just like love and connection and community, and that by sharing it all, we will all bloom more beautifully. Thank you.